Hi, my name is Shruti Sannon, and I'm a Computing Innovation Fellow at the University of Michigan School of Information. In this talk, I'm going to tell you about research conducted with my co-author Dan Cosley on how to design a more inclusive gig economy. We examine risks and opportunities for workers with disabilities across a range of gig economy platforms. 19% of working-age people with a disability were employed in 2021 in the United States. That number is more than 3 times larger for those without a disability. This gap has persisted since 2009, the first year for which annual data are available. Why does this gap exist? Well, disabled workers have to contend with a number of challenges around employment, including discriminatory hiring practices, prejudice from managers, lower wages, limited career advancement opportunities, inaccessible workplaces, and a lack of accommodations. One type of employment that might sidestep some of these barriers is gig work, crowdwork, freelancing, ridesharing, and delivery services that are often seen as providing easy access to employment and flexibility in setting hours and choosing tasks. However, there is limited research on workers with disabilities in the gig economy, and existing research focuses on crowdwork, which is just a small segment of the gig economy. This work finds that crowdwork offers several benefits, especially around flexibility and independence, but it also involves challenges, particularly around inaccessible work. But we see a need to look at gig work contexts beyond crowdwork, because workers with disabilities tend to be overrepresented in service roles, and this trend may extend to the gig economy. This led to our first research question: what are disabled workers' experiences across different types of gig work? Further, the gig economy has several critiques around low pay, algorithmic control, the over-reliance on ratings from customers, and a lack of traditional legal protections. We don't know how these challenges impact workers who are already marginalized along the lines of disability. This led to our second research question: how do the risks and challenges of gig work impact disabled workers? To answer these questions, we used a qualitative approach drawing on principles of grounded theory. This is a highly inductive approach that involved iteratively collecting and analyzing data and diversifying our sample to see how our findings varied across different dimensions. We interviewed 24 disabled workers on a range of platforms. I also conducted fieldwork on crowdwork and delivery service platforms, which helped me better connect with workers and better understand their stories. Many of the workers we spoke with faced both economic and social marginalization. Gig work was the only source of work for 17 workers, and the majority earned under $25,000 a year. They had a range of physical disabilities such as quadriplegia, chronic illnesses such as ulcerative colitis, and mental illnesses such as bipolar disorder. They also held other marginalized identities along the lines of race, gender, and sexual orientation. Our interviews revealed that gig work provided workers with many different types of flexibility that were important to them. Gig work was also easy to access, and so it allowed them to avoid the discrimination they faced in traditional workplaces. One driver with COPD said, "If it wasn't for Uber, I would literally have no options." At the same time, the structure of these platforms poses several disability-related challenges. First, there are many tasks on work platforms that are inaccessible, but a lack of transparency around what each task involves makes it additionally hard to avoid inaccessible tasks. So for example, a quadriplegic crowd worker used speech dictation or an online keyboard while working, but some tasks didn't allow the use of these tools. Second, on many platforms, algorithms control what tasks entail without any input from the workers. This was problematic when workers wanted to select specific types of tasks that would be better suited to their needs. For example, delivery workers with mobility impairments wanted to select accessible locations, and some people of color wanted to avoid neighborhoods where they felt unsafe, but this level of choice was unavailable to workers. Workers can protect themselves from these risks to some degree, but this self-protection is costly. For example, a delivery worker talked about declining an offer for disability-related reasons, but was worried that the algorithm would lower his pay rate because of this, leading to a protection penalty. To avoid this economic penalty, another worker described just clenching her jaw and pushing through physical pain. In doing so, she had to pay a compliance penalty where she put her health at risk. In this way, workers are faced with choices with suboptimal outcomes. Workers are not only being evaluated by algorithms, but also by customers. This is true in many jobs, but particularly salient for gig work because customer ratings determine if you get to keep working or not. So for example, a driver with a mobility impairment talked about how he had many negative social interactions with customers because he couldn't lift their luggage, even though lifting luggage isn't actually part of the job. And so for example, when he explained to one passenger that he has a disability, he said he could tell that his ratings got impacted and his tips got impacted. This is especially concerning when the worker is doing gig work because they have no other option. And as independent contractors, workers have no recourse or support to mitigate this kind of discrimination. Many participants also held multiple social identities that face marginalization in addition to disability, leading to complex intersectional challenges when doing gig work. For example, one driver could not do traditional work due to multiple mental health conditions, but experienced severe harassment and homophobia while driving, which exacerbated their disability and prevented them from working at all. In the paper, we talk about other ways in which disability intersects with race, gender, sexual orientation, and class. Together, our findings showed that disabled workers face new and complex challenges that require them to do more unpaid, invisible labor than other workers. This is work that is required to do a job that is not part of the job itself and is not paid. This labor includes doing jobs that ultimately can't be completed due to accessibility issues or developing workarounds for them, as well as the labor involved in navigating discrimination and harassment. This wasted time and effort has an outsized impact on disabled workers who also earn less per hour than workers without disabilities. We provide several design suggestions in the paper around designing for a more inclusive gig economy. Some of these focus on improving problems around doing tasks, especially in terms of accessibility. For example, by making the task more transparent, giving workers more control over their workflows, allowing tasks to be more adaptable, and supporting workers' preferences around how they do their work. Our second set of design suggestions focus on mitigating the unfairness, discrimination, and negative interactions disabled workers experience. For example, many workers we spoke with wanted ways to disclose their preferences or their disabilities to customers, and we discussed how they might be able to do so safely while avoiding negative interactions. And we also consider how platforms might vet customers and support workers in contesting discriminatory behavior. This study makes three main contributions we'd like to leave you with. We provide a much wider look at types of gig work and disability than prior work, providing more generalizable observations that apply to a wider set of contexts. Second, while we find that disabled workers find several benefits to doing gig work, they also face several risks and challenges, including complex intersectional challenges, and they expend a lot of invisible labor in gig work. In this way, we show that gig work can be a necessary but still less than ideal option for many workers. We also provide a number of design suggestions for how gig work platforms could be designed to be more inclusive while also mitigating the discrimination faced by disabled workers. We hope that you'll check out the paper to learn more about our findings, theoretical contributions, and design implications. Thanks for attending this talk.